A scrap of parchment still lies in a glass case deep inside Windsor's royal archives. The instrument of abdication, Edward VIII signed in 1936, consigning Fort Belvedere, his beloved pleasure tower on the brow of Surrey Heath, to a twilight realm of uneasy myth. No one expected the fortress to breathe again. Yet one soft August dawn, its shuttered windows flare with life, deliveries rumble through the ancient iron gates, painters whitewash soot-stained cornices, and discreet surveyors pace the lawns with laser rods glinting like drawn sabers. Word spreads faster than ravens over the round tower. Prince William, firstborn of King Charles III and heir apparent, intends to uproot his young family from Adelaide Cottage and claim Fort Belvedere as their permanent home. That single decision slices the palace air sharper than a saber's edge. On the morning the scaffolding rises, Charles stands at the Clarence house window watching drizzle crawl across the moor. He says nothing. But aides sense the temperature shift, as if a glacier carved somewhere unseen. The king's silence is a language older than English. Those who serve him read each breath like scripture. The private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, sets his coffee untouched, his pen poised for orders that do not come. Across town, courtiers begin revising speeches they might never deliver, because in the House of Windsor the slightest tremor can topple thrones. Fort Belvedere is no ordinary cottage. It is a symbol stitched with barbed wire, the hideout where a love-struck monarch chose Wallace over empire, triggering the gravest constitutional crisis of the modern crown. Charles, who spent his childhood absorbing sermons about duty before desire, cannot see those ramparts without tasting the iron tang of betrayal. And now his own son, his carefully groomed successor, seeks to resurrect that monument to abdication, wrap his children in its walls, and call it home. William's camp frames the move as pragmatic: space for 3 growing children, privacy beyond the tourist-laden long walk, proximity to both Windsor Castle and Eton. Yet beneath the spreadsheets of floor plans lies another equation. Fort Belvedere belongs to the Crown estate, but William, through the Duchy of Cornwall, inherited upon Charles's accession, controls vast revenues. Renovation costs will be offset by his own coffers, signaling a financial independence no heir has flexed so openly since the days of Edward himself. Inside Kensington's warren of offices, the prince studies aerial photographs, the octagonal tower, the emerald sweep of Great Park, the lake-reflecting sky like a shield. Advisors warn of optics. William's jaw tightens. Optics, he replies, can be refocused. Britain's future king should live where history dares him to reclaim it. Kate, poised at his shoulder, sees a different battlefield. Fort Belvedere offers sanctuary from paparazzi lenses that plague Adelaide's gates, a stage upon which their children can chase squirrels instead of headlines. She also knows the legend, how Wallace danced on the balustrade as the empire cracked, but she trusts their own example of service will disinfect the stone. Queen Camilla catches the king staring at a faded photograph, a teenage Charles astride a pony near Fort Belvedere, the shadow of his father's disappointment draped over him like fog. "You're not him," she whispers, brushing lint from his lapel. Charles exiles the picture to a drawer. At council the next morning, when a minister unwittingly jokes that moving house is hardly a federal case, the king's reply freezes the room: "Houses are never just houses in this family." Fleet Street seizes the scent with feral precision. Headlines snarl of Fort Belvedere coup, caricaturing William as a renovator king in waiting. Op-eds dredge the wounds of 1936, reminding readers that a Windsor under that roof once shattered sacred oaths. Republic campaigners relish the parallel, monarchists blanch. Social media splits into camps. #Belvedere bold praising William's modernization, #Belvedere blunder deeming it sacrilege. Each retweet stokes the furnace of familial strain. Leaks multiply. A footman tells a cousin who texts a journalist that Charles slammed a crimson dispatch box hard enough to rattle porcelain. Another source claims the king's daily blood tests, monitoring his post-treatment remission, reveal elevated cortisol on days Fort Belvedere is mentioned. Buckingham Palace declines comment, a silence that roars louder than any statement. Behind palace curtains, history's ghosts converge. The Boy at Balmoral, 1967. 13-year-old Charles wanders granite corridors while courtiers gossip that his great-uncle David, the abdicated king, has telephoned yet again, begging for funds. Charles overhears a valet mutter, "Love is the costliest addiction," and spends the night drafting a letter promising he will never choose self over sovereignty. He tears it up at dawn. The Investiture, 1969. The young prince kneels to the Queen at Carnarvon, golden coronet trembling. Crowds chant, "Wales for the Welsh," as protest signs shake like storm banners. Afterwards, he retreats to Fort Belvedere for one clandestine weekend, hoping its quiet library might silence the jeers. Instead he finds Edward's monogram still etched on a door frame, a relic that snarls, "You can run from duty, you just have to pay." The Vigil at Sandringham, 2021. On the eve of Philip's funeral, Charles paces the billiard room, rehearsing eulogies. William enters, eyes red, and confesses fear of inheriting a monarchy hollowed by scandal. Charles clasps his son's shoulders, vowing they will guide the crown together. But vows, like castles, decay unless defended. Late September, a thunderstorm thrashes Buckingham Palace as father and son meet alone. Lightning forks through mullioned windows, turning priceless portraits ghost white. Charles, voice level, offers an alternative, a Georgian manor on the Windsor estate, unburdened by abdication law. William's answer is glacial, the manor is charming, 40 rooms of charm, but Fort Belvedere is destiny. He invokes modern monarchy, transparency, evolution, healing old shadows by living in them openly. Charles hears only the echoes of Edward. The room's antique clock tolls once. Agreement crumbles like mortar. The rift bleeds into bureaucracy. The Royal Collection Trust pauses loan discussions for an exhibition William was to curate. The Duchy's tenants in Cornwall receive letters hinting at audits. Kensington insiders counter with memos about streamlining costs at Clarence House. Parliament whispers of regency contingencies, should Charles's health falter, an undercurrent the king finds both insulting and chillingly plausible. Camilla convenes a clandestine summit, Princess Anne, ever the family's backbone, the Duke of Edinburgh, pragmatic to a fault, and Prince Edward's wife Sophie, whose empathy bridges divides. They script a détente plan. Charles grants Fort Belvedere on a 30-year lease, retaining archival oversight. William funds restoration, but agrees to host annual public history days celebrating duty over romance. The proposal reaches the king's desk, unread, because Charles has fled to Birkhall, seeking solace among Scots pines older than the crown itself. In the Highland stillness, Charles hikes through heather until dusk, mind replaying William's insistence, Fort Belvedere is destiny. Destiny. The word stings like nettle. Wasn't it destiny that shackled him into an unhappy marriage with Diana? Destiny that now tests his reign mere years after coronation. From a ridge he glimpses Balmoral's turrets, remembers his mother's steady hand signing accession papers. She trusted him to steward the crown. How could she foresee this fault line opening within her own bloodline? Night falls. Charles lights a peat fire and pulls out an unlined notebook, part journal, part confession. He writes of Edward's folly, of Wallace's laughing eyes in faded newsreels, of a nation that forgave, but never forgot. He wonders whether forgiveness is enough or whether some walls, like those of Fort Belvedere, are mortared with curses. When dawn coralizes the hills, he rips the pages free and feeds them to the flames. Back south, Kate orchestrates a calculated charm offensive. She invites military families to picnic on the future Fort Belvedere lawns, cameras excluded, stories destined to leak as warm rumors, the princess offering sandwiches to toddlers, discussing veterans' housing, mapping community gardens. Opinion columns shift. Perhaps the fortress can symbolize renewal rather than relapse. She schedules early morning runs along the bridle paths, knowing photographers lurk beyond hedgerows. Each published shot of her sprinting past the tower's silhouette seeds acceptance in the public psyche. Inside Fort Belvedere's disused chapel, scaffolding trembles under restoration crews when workers uncover a hidden fresco, an allegory of Archangel Michael weighing souls. The discovery electrifies historians, adding cultural heft to William's project. Yet its symbolism is brutal: judgment, reckoning, the cost of choice. William stands beneath the archangel's stern gaze and imagines futures measured on those fateful scales. October debates on heritage grants swirl with subtext. A backbencher questions whether taxpayer funds should polish a palace tied to abdication. Another counters that monarchy thrives on repurposed past. Outside, protesters brandish placards. Duty first, faces of Charles, evolve or die, faces of William. Tourists film the shouting. Hashtags multiply. And somewhere in the digital ferment an algorithm decides the House of Windsor is trending at levels unseen since Meghan's Oprah sit-down. Winter brings icy rain, and lab results. Charles' oncologist notes irregular markers. Stress is a saboteur, she warns. The king consigns the file to a locked drawer, refuses to alarm the nation with another health bulletin. But Camilla hears the thunder behind his ribs when he sleeps. On Christmas Eve, the monarch should radiate festive reassurance. Instead he withdraws by the Balmoral fire, polishing a brass telescope that once belonged to Edward VII, eyes reflecting flames rather than carols. Across Berkshire, William strings lights around Fort Belvedere's turrets, each bulb blinking like a beacon. He chooses white lights, clarity, hope, while tabloids print side-by-side photos of father and son, one cloaked in hearthglow, the other in lead brilliance. The contrast becomes metaphor, fueling op-eds that ask whether the crown faces a generational eclipse. Early February, Windsor snow thaws into silver slush. Camilla orchestrates one last meeting, neutral ground, St. George's Hall, empty but for two chairs beneath medieval banners. Charles arrives first, cane tapping stone in time with memories that refuse to die. William enters moments later, hands bare, expression unshielded. No aides, no transcripts. What passes between them only the vaulted ceiling hears. Some say raised voices rattled chandeliers, others insist they spoke in low grief-thick whispers. The outcome is known, a compromise so fragile it feels spun from frost. Fort Belvedere will be granted to the Prince and Princess of Wales under a lifetime license, renewable only upon sovereign consent. All renovations must preserve historical integrity under supervision of the royal household. The Prince will finance a permanent exhibition within the tower detailing the abdication crisis, an unflinching testament to duty forsaken, open to scholars and public alike. In return, King Charles accepts quarterly retreats there, ensuring the fortress remains a place of monarchic reflection, not familial division. Both men sign. Their pens freeze for a heartbeat above parchment, as if aware history leans over their shoulders, breathing. By spring, carpenters' hammers echo across Great Park, blending with lark song. Charlotte plants an oak sapling beyond the moat, George sketches the tower, labeling turrets after constellations. Louis chases dragonflies along the lakeshore, oblivious to adult tempests. Reporters banned from the grounds perch on hilltops, telescopic lenses twitching like hungry hawks. Inside Fort Belvedere's library, a glass case is installed, for the faded abdication parchment, on loan from the archives, its cracked ink confronting every visitor with the sinew of history. Yet peace remains conditional. Should Charles's health falter, whispers of regency could reignite quarrels no contract can contain. Should William's popularity eclipse his father's, parliamentary knives might gleam anew. And always, the spirit of Edward hovers in the tower's eaves, reminding each generation that love, ambition, and duty rarely share a bed without breaking the frame. For now, Fort Belvedere stands poised between ruin and resurrection, its ivy pruned, its windows blazing, its chapel's archangel watching like a sentinel against repetition. The crown endures, but the mortar lines spider with invisible stress. In corridors from Buckingham to Sandringham, courtiers listen to those cracks widening in the night, counting them not by sound, but by the tremor in their sovereign's pulse. Because in the House of Windsor, every stone remembers, and memory, like monarchy, never forgets.